Hello and welcome to this, our round 3 feature match. Just a slight correction for you there. It is Arnost Zidek against Andreas Ganz in our feature match area. We will be kicking off with that match very shortly. You can see Arnost Zidek on the left of our screen with Delver. On the other side, Andreas Ganz. He is on, by the looks of things, Eldrazi there. Now you can see 2-0 next to each of these players' names. That's not the game score. They've just both got 2 match wins under their belts. This the very first game. We see an Eldrazi Temple there from Ganz, and an early Delver of Secrets for Arnost Zidek.
Yeah, Arnost Zidek is playing the so-called Bug Delver deck. We also did a deck tech with Petersen, so quite a popular choice among other Czech players. The Czech players used to be very big proponents of 4-color Delver, but with Lightning Bolt not being that great against Eldrazi, they've shaved 1 color and went the three-color way, but adding Dismembers and even Murderous Cut.
I mean, I think that it's interesting the way that the Eldrazi seem to be gradually working their way back through time into every format. Eldrazi in Legacy have a few kind of cool tricks up their sleeve. In addition to the Eldrazi Temple that we see in play and Eye of Ugin in order to make their creatures that much cheaper, they also have access to the likes of City of Traitors and Ancient Tomb, meaning their deck is very consistent indeed.
Yep. Andreas' deck is a little interesting in the fact that he has more blue cards than we see usually. It's not a colorless Eldrazi deck, although that got very popular recently. But there's Eldrazi Skyspawn and Drowner of Hope in the deck as well. So it's more of a blue sort of way, but it doesn't really need too many blue colored lands. He runs Corrupted Crossroads and Cavern of Souls to get the blue mana, so it's really easy on the overall.
And of course, the Eldrazi Skyspawner, the fact that it has flying potentially very relevant here, as if Delver of Secrets reveals a spell on the top of Arnost Zidek's deck, he will be able to transform it into Insectile Aberration, a 3/2 flyer. Having a flyer to block, a little bit unusual for these Eldrazi decks.
Yeah, exactly, and this is what makes the matchup a little better for the Eldrazi deck, I believe, because one of the ways the Delver deck wins is usually playing an early Delver, flipping, and then being able to remove all the key creatures with the Dismembers, with the Force of Wills, and so on. So having a Sky Spawner this early just gives Andreas a lot of time to set up his game plan and keep going.
And of course, with Eye of Ugin and that Eldrazi Temple, in terms of setting up, he could be casting a very substantial threat next turn.
Yeah, exactly. He still has those Thought-Knot Seers. He still has those Reality Smashers. So depending on what he draws, it's might be a big turn next one.
So Baleful Strix the play from Arnost Zidek, gets him to draw a card, and he now has a flying Death Toucher. Death Touch very good against the Eldrazi. We can see here basically it looks like both of these players having draws that allow them to really leverage their position in the game. Neither one of them has stumbled too much in the early game, so we're going to see some real magic here.
Yeah, and also, actually, Andreas Ganz went all the way back to Modern in this one, because not only is he running the blue cards, but he also is running Eldrazi Displacer for those fancy Drowner of Hope, Eldrazi Skyspawner combos. And there you see it, the Displacer, 3-mana, 3/3, can use to keep blinking out his creatures, getting maybe some more tokens, or even protecting them from removal, which is going to be very relevant in this game.
Yeah, had to use the counter on Tendo Icebridge to be able to cast that white Eldrazi, but now that it's in play, the colorless mana he can produce with Eldrazi Temple will be enough to activate the Eldrazi there that he's got in play.
The Displacer?
That's the one.
I think I was about to say that Arnost was actually in pretty good position for this game. He gets to flip the Delver with the Brainstorm. Not only that, but he also has Snapcaster Mage in his hand. So with the Ponder and now also the Brainstorm, he can manipulate his library to draw the removal spells. It's actually kind of nice. Like he can play Dismember, Snapcaster, Flash it back. So he had ways to go long in this game, but. The way that Andreas Ganz setup is right now, it's still fairly annoying. He has to kill the Displacer first, because that protects his other creatures, but he also eventually will probably need to kill the Displacer as well. The deck doesn't run as much removal, even though there's, I believe, 3 Abrupt Decays, 2 Dismembers, and 1 Murderous Cut. Yes.
So Arnost offering up the trade here. Andreas Ganz may be tempted to block with his Sky Spawner and then flicker it with his Eldrazi Displacer.
Or he might be going for the trade here.
I guess Insectile Aberration is not going to get less annoying.
Yeah, exactly. And with the setup, I mean, Andreas has to decide if he wants to rather keep the creature, or because he's not netting another Eldrazi sound, he would have to sacrifice it to use the ability of Displacer. So he went for the trade, which I agree here with. Delver is an annoying creature on this board, and I'm sure he has some more gas in the time because he hasn't played many spells this game yet.
So more copies of Brainstorm coming from Arnost Zidek. That the FNM promo Brainstorm.
And he drew another one.
Putting a couple of cards back in, and we see that there's a Polluted Delta at the front of Zidek's hand there. The interaction between Brainstorm and Fetch Land's one of the kind of cornerstones of Legacy, meaning that the cards that he doesn't want to draw again, he can shuffle away with that Fetch Land just as soon as he so chooses.
Yeah, and it's basically the Brainstorm Fetch Land combo at its finest being shown here. He gets to put 2 lands back on the top while keeping 1 Fetch Land in his hand, which is his final land card in his hand. Play it, shuffle away, and now he's gonna be able to look at some sweet new cards. But I assume he will play a Tarmogoyf instead rather than going for more card manipulation with the Ponder or the Brainstorm that he has in his hand still. He needs to start putting pressure on because Andreas can start to go real explosive. He's even running 1 Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, in his deck, so which is not that common for the, as we like to call them, colorless Eldrazi builds.
Land creatures and instants already in the graveyard, so if Tarmogoyf does come down here, it will be the biggest creature on the board.
Yeah, he can also play Delver and Ponder, which is also a very good play. I didn't see the Delver there, or alternative Brainstorm, just to have a way to make sure it flips. He even has a Deathrite Shaman, so he'll be able to flop the board instead of playing Tarmogoyf here. And the Deathrite Shaman is a very good creature on this board. On his upkeep, even with the Delver trigger on the stack, he can play Brainstorm to guarantee the flip from the Delver. Another really cool interaction.
So Andreas Ganz here, a little bit to think about. He's not necessarily going to be able to beat through on the board particularly easily now that there's more creatures knocking around. And his build does have a few stricter color requirements than many of the Eldrazi builds, and currently he does not have access to any colored mana. Check that. He now has access to lots of black mana, thanks to Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. And Endless One comes down. Now it's made 2 cheaper by Ivugin. Ivugin also tapping for a black mana. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe, for this Endless One.
Yeah, you're good at math.
Unfortunately, Baleful Strix does not care how big that Endless One is. It can quite happily block as much as it likes, and Death Touch will do the trick there.
So, but we'll see what I described earlier there. So with Delver on the stack, Arnost goes for the Brainstorm here. Finds an Abrupt Decay as well, which is pretty nice. 2 fetches as well, so and he needs to be a little careful. He'll probably put one of the fetches on top and then put a card he's going to play regardless this turn on top of that. So that it's going to be probably the Abrupt Decay, which he can reveal to the Delver of Secrets. And I assume he will then play the Abrupt Decay on the Displacer while leaving up a mana to do either Ponder or Deathrite Shaman shenanigans. We'll see. Maybe he can even play Tarmogoyf, which is going to be smaller than the Endless One, though. But with the Baleful Strix on the board, he doesn't need to worry too much.
Baleful Strix just a really powerful value card. You already draw a card to replace it when you cast it, and it's going to be able to exile to Force of Will, and it's going to be able to block anything in the format and kill it thanks to Death Touch. I mean, when you have Sneak and Show or something putting Eldrazi into play, being able to engineer a trade, pretty important.
Yeah. So instead of killing the Endless One, he goes for the Displacer as we predicted, just because it's a fairly annoying creature on this board. And now after playing a land, he has plenty of options still to decide if he wants to play the Goyf thanks to the Deathrite Shaman or go for something else. I like the way Arnost is playing this game. It's really setting up his turn to maximize the mana, which is really important when you play, well, Soul-Tide Delver, or Bug Delver as it's been known in the past. Oh, still having the Snapcaster Mage, which is great.
So there's a Ponder. He's going to get a chance to look at the top 3, reorder them as he so chooses, and draw a card. If he wants to go deep on it, he can do what he's going for, which is to shuffle away all 3 of them. Turns out none of them were the cards he was looking for.
Yeah, 2 lands and a Delver of Secrets is really not where you want to be. Arnost now with that Snapcaster Mage in hand as well. He wants to just draw something more powerful. Ideally, one of the removal spells that he has. even like blind drawing Force of Will here would be pretty nice because he could counter the next threat from Andreas while beating down. But he did draw a land again, so.
Yeah, the Sultai Devil deck or Bug Devil deck, it's not a deck that can leverage the 5th, 6th, 7th land in play particularly. At this point, Arnost is mainly going to be looking for fetch lands just so that he can get shuffles at key moments to keep his deck sort of flowing neatly.
Yeah, I mean, Arnost also has the option of playing Snapcaster Mage to flashback the Abrupt Decay, killing the Endless One. So if Andreas wants to win this game, he needs to start applying even more pressure. So ideally, something like a Reality Smasher or Thought Knot Seer. Thought Knot Seer would be really good on this board. Just being able to take away one of the 2 good cards in Arnost's hand. So and ideally wanting to protect that Endless One.
Andreas Ganz here, not really drawing the kind of explosive Eldrazi start that we sometimes see from the Eldrazi deck. One of the important things in Legacy for Eldrazi tends to be the ability to use Chalice of the Void to really shut down these decks that are looking to make tempo plays, and he's not been able to do this. It's been a straightforward creature draw and not even a very explosive one for Andreas Ganz.
Yeah, he goes for a Phyrexian Revoker here. I will assume he's naming Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, he's pointing to it. So that's going to slow, but actually the Deathrite Shaman is probably the least relevant thing on the board currently. The Baleful Strig is holding off the Endless One, and the Delver Seekers will start bashing in. There's a Force of Will from Arnost, so he's in great shape, especially with that Snapcaster Mage, as well as a Goyf, so he can really do some interesting things here, if he wants to.
I mean, he's got the 5th land, so that if he really wanted to, he could pay 5 mana for his Force of Will, and at this point, it may be that he'd rather do that than lose a card in hand.
Yeah, I mean, losing the Deathrite Shaman mana-producing part is fine, but he just needs to beat down, make sure that the board is stable, and swing in the air with the Insectile Aberration.
It is a horror.
It is a horror.
If it works out that he plays against Thing in the Ice, he does not need to worry about Insectile Aberration being bounced.
That's a really cool interaction. What does he go for here? Right, so he goes for the Goyf. He can afford to play it slow. It's also better to keep the Snapcaster in hand for the eventual Force of Will, because Andreas doesn't have that many cards in his hand regardless. So he would be able to Force of Will something. And if not, then he has a Snapcaster Mage which he can use to flashback Brainstorm, Ponder, Abrupt Decay. He has a lot of options.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf at present, I believe, a 3/4. Creatures, instants, and lands in the graveyard.
We have a Tarmogoyf die, so 5/6.
What are we missing here?
It's a land creature instant as well. Sorcery for Ponder.
Yes.
And
Artifact.
maybe, potentially. Yeah, Lotus Petal. The turn 1 Lotus Petal.
Yes,
of course,
there we go.
missed that one. So 5/6.
Just as well we got the dice, eh?
Yeah. This little piece of tech really helping us out. Let's see what Andreas can do here, because he plays City Traits. His mana is definitely not a problem. Ulamog would be pretty sweet. He has that one off in his
really?
His deck. Yeah, and I think he would be able to cast it. It would cost 8 mana.
Well, he can activate his Eye of Ugin, which is a little scary for Arnost deck.
Yeah, but I mean, he doesn't have enough mana for that, I don't think, just yet. Okay, he goes for the Warping Whale.
That will be enough to deal with Baleful Strix.
That's pretty good.
The best blocker available to Arnost Zidek, no longer in the game.
He could counter it still if he wanted to, but I don't think he will.
Yeah, I guess that given that Zidek knows that he has the option of Snapcaster Mage into Abrupt Decay next turn, he can afford to take this hit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he will go down to 10, and that's still far away from lethal, so we'll be fine. We'll see if Arnost pulls the trigger here. No, he's waiting. Remember, Deathrite Shaman has been named by the Phyrexian Revoker, so he can activate it for mana or any of the abilities.
Just a straightforward 1/2 for 1.
Yeah. Arnost does draw a Thoughtseize, which it's not that great on this board. We assume that Andreas has probably played everything that he wanted to. So Arnost's getting aggressive with his Tarmogoyf as well. I like it, especially with Snapcaster coming up.
And of course, Arnost Zidek does not even need to crack that fetch land in order to be able to tap it for mana. There is Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth in play. If he wants to just tap 5 for a Force of Will, or tap his Scalding Tarn for the black mana for
Underground Sea.
Yeah.
He has, I think this deck runs 3 Underground Seas and 3 Tropical Islands. So yeah, he can fetch a blue source.
Yeah, functionally his Tropical Islands right now are also Underground Seas. And also Bayou.
In a way, yeah. But interesting enough, this deck does not run any Bayous. Just because you can't return it to your hand with Daze. It doesn't cast Ponder or Brainstorm. Right, so, as expected, Arnost was patient enough. He's going to play the Snapcaster Mage, Abrupt Decay, the Endless one, and hold any offensive plans from Andreas, who has no follow-up, which is a huge problem for him with just the Phyrexian Revoker here in play.
And Zidek still holding on to that Force of Will. So he's going to have to tap 5 if he wants to cast it right now, but given the state of the board, I don't think he would mind too much.
No. He also drew a Wastelands. I mean, at this point, I think it's fairly academic. He won't need it anymore, but if he could destroy the Eye of Ugin and thwart any potential shenanigans from Andreas. Arnost should attack. Should still attack, probably with the Deathrite Shaman as well. But I mean, he could draw another Abrupt Decay for the Revoker, but at this point, it won't really matter. Andreas, sorry.
Andreas may just feel pressured into blocking here anyway, at which point his Phyrexian Revoker will go away and Deathrite Shaman will be live again. So 5 points coming through. Andreas Ganz going down to 6, and now we do have a live Deathrite Shaman. So even if we saw, say, Drowner of Secrets coming down, Drowner of Hope, sorry, coming down, there would still be ways of getting damage through in spite of blockers.
Yeah, that's why he didn't attack. He just knew that Andreas would be forced to trade unless like a Dismember would be played or something like that. So now he can use this ability. And I don't expect this game to last much longer.
Well, you called it like you saw it, and you saw it correctly, because that is game 1 to Arnost Zidek. He will have just one more game to win in order to make this, but we're going to get a chance to have a little bit of a look across into some of our other matches here. It looks like we have Thomas Enevoldsen is up against, he's got Jake Bondoc there on the other side of the table, and on the left of our screen, this is Death and Taxes. There's an Aether Vial in play on 3 counters, so you can flash in creatures with a cost of 3 or less. Serra Avenger is Vigilant flying 3/3, well actually a 5/5 thanks to Sword of Fire and Ice. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, pretty much just lands for Jake Bondoc with the exception of that card up top there, Ancestral Vision getting very close to coming off suspend, which suggests to me that what we have here is Shardless Agent deck that's able to really make the most of the fact that Ancestral Vision functionally does cost 0.
Yeah, also known as Shardless Bug, Shardless Sultai. Deck that's running a lot of card advantage. Some people call it the Jund of Legacy. Oh, there we. Speaking of Jund cards, Liliana of the Veil is a great card for this situation, unless Thomas has something coming out from that Aether Vial, and I see a Flicker Wisp in his hand, so that's pretty tricky.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp is going to be a nice one here. I mean, the most obvious thing for Jake to be doing with his Liliana is that removing 2 counters to make a sacrifice of a creature. Flicker Wisp come down in response as both a sacrificial spirit, I think it is, elemental maybe, but on top of that, he's going to be able to exile something just briefly. It'll come back at the end of turn. But the main thing here is Serra Avenger is still around with a Sword of Fire and Ice, and Jake Bondoc, his only follow-up is Deathrite Shaman and a Wasteland on Caracas.
Right, so even just a cute interaction of being able to Flicker Wisp away the Relic of Progenitus just to be able to exile another card, it's really cute. That's what Death and Taxes does. And Jake is in not great shape, but the Serra Avenger is just a huge threat. Just by attacking, Thomas will get to draw a card, kill the Deathrite Shaman if he wants to. Or he can kill. He can maybe kill Liliana with the trigger as well. He also has Umezawa's Jite and Batterskull in his hand. Oof.
Yeah, there we go. Jite equip. The fact that Aether Vial's still there untapped means that Jake Bondoc, in spite of the fact that Enevoldsen is tapped out, can't assume that there's not going to be any tricks. Big swings coming through here. Charge counters on the Jite. Sword of Fire and Ice doing its thing. This is a powerful start for Thomas Enevoldsen, who's already a game up here in this match.
Yeah, so Jake will go down on 5, I assume, and Thomas will use the trigger from the Sword of Fire and Ice to kill the Liliana, and I think he'll use the Zidek counters to kill Death Right. So basically, it leaves Jake with no board, but does have the Ancestral Vision. So maybe with a couple good cards, he could find something here. Like Abrupt Decay would be pretty good.
Abrupt Decay would be great. Looks like he's got one of them to work with. This game is not over yet.
Yeah, not much else going on though. It looks like there's plenty of lands still. Yeah. Ambitious Ancestral Visions there. I don't think we will see that resolving this game. We never know. Yeah, 3 lands and Abrupt Decay for Jake Bondoc. And I'm actually not sure if he actually drew for his turn. It looked like he drew 3 from the visions, but I'm not sure if he drew for his turn. It can sometimes happen. You're drawing so many cards that you might forget, but I wouldn't bet on it.
All right. Well, that's a comparatively good answer to an attacking Serra Avenger. In spite of all of the weight of equipment it's carrying, it still only costs 2 mana, which means it's a fine target for Abrupt Decay. Still more equipment in hand for Thomas Enevoldsen and in Batterskull, but it looks like it's going to be a Phyrexian Revoker to kick things off. Holds a sword just as well as the Angel. Before that, Thomas decides to exile his Relic of the Progenitus, get rid of the cards in graveyard and potentially draw something, finds a land, and that means that he's not effectively set back at all on mana by having to use the Relic. Plays his Phyrexian Revoker, immediately equips Sword of Fire and Ice, which gives it a pretty substantial amount of protection. Protection from red, protection from blue. Red not so relevant here, but you never know when Jaces might come along to potentially try and bounce that creature. That's no longer going to be an option for him.
I think with the Revoker, he probably named Liliana of the Veil again, or maybe Jace the Mind Sculptor. Liliana, yeah. So we got confirmation that it is actually Liliana of the Veil, which protects his Revoker. And now he'll be able to swing it for the kill because the Revoker is a 4/3, but the trigger from the Sword of Fire and Ice actually deals 2 damage. So that should finish off the game because Jake just drew so many lands, as you can see.
So Thomas Enevoldsen rattling off his win. That was his first win in the tournament. He started off on 2-0 thanks to the buys that he had there. So we're going to get a chance to jump back to our main match shortly, that one being between Arnost Zidek and Andreas Ganz. Haven't missed any magic there. They're just looking at their opening hands. And it looks like we've got a mulligan from Andreas Ganz. Didn't like his opening 7. It must be said that the Eldrazi deck in Legacy, not quite as beholden to having to mulligan based on lands as the modern version.
True. You have more of the better lands, so to speak. In Modern, you did used to have Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin as your only lands that made your stuff cheaper. But here in Legacy, you also have Ancient Tomb, City of Traders. The land selection is a little better. And also, it helps that neither Eldrazi Temple nor Eye of Ugin are banned, like in Modern.
It's definitely a big deal, and it may well be that where Andreas is mulliganing in this matchup, it's more a matter of recognizing that he really wants to be drawing cards like Chalice of the Void. He can afford to mulligan for value rather than simply down to patchy mana draws. Looks like Zidek has a pretty solid hand there. A couple of Tarmogoyfs. He's got a Thoughtseize to work with along with some blue card drawing. Meanwhile, Andreas Ganz, looking at 6, sees a couple of Thought Knots here. I'm not entirely sure that there's enough land to work with there, though. Corrupted Crossroads.
And no, nothing else. Nothing else. I see a Relic of Progenitus in his hand, double Thought Knot Seer, a Warping Whale, and Chalice of the Void. So, not really much to work. Maybe if he can scry himself into an Ancient Tomb, his hand would be fine. But this hand doesn't look great. But he's going to keep and scry. Bottom, risky, very risky.
And I guess he has 15 cards in his deck that let him make 2 mana with the 1 land. But kicks things off with Relic of Progenitus. Relic of Progenitus, very, very good against Tarmogoyf that is sat in Arnost Zidek's hand. Not too many other really big interactions. It obviously shuts down Snapcaster Mage.
Also Deathrite Shaman.
Ah, interesting, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of hard. sometimes, especially in situations like this, where Andreas will need to actually use the Relic of Progenitus to draw a card to get the extra land, which will just make it not very useful. It's more like a cantrip, and so won't get to use it to its full effectiveness. But yeah, it has some decent interactions here, and if you manage to land in turn 1 and keep using it progressively over the length of the game, it's actually really good against also the other cards you mentioned.
So Iovugin came off the top of the deck there. Wasn't ever going to help with casting the Chalice of the Void that ultimately got hit by Thoughtseize. We see Andreas Ganz does use his Relic of Progenitus early just to try and draw into more action in terms of mana. Finds Eldrazi Displacer.
But he won't be able to play it this turn. Maybe next turn. Or if he draws any land, then any land except another Iovugin, he can play start playing the Thought-Knot Seers in his hand. Which is I think why Arnost is going to go for Tarmogoyf here. I mean, it's fairly slow now, but I think he has 2, so he doesn't have to worry about 2 Thought-Knots being played in 1 turn, I don't think. Knowing his hand, it won't probably happen. So he can afford to play it a little slower here, if he so desires. He also has a Baleful Strix, so he's I think he's fine against the world of Thought-Knot Seers.
Kicks things off with the Ponder here, Zidek, not necessarily looking to get loads of damage in early. Those Tarmogoyfs are going to take a little bit of time to build up after the early Relic plays. Arnost Zidek quite literally pondering in addition to casting the spell Ponder there.
Yeah, and Arnost has been around for such a long time. With his Pro Tour top, he came in 2005, but he's been playing plenty before that. I still remember when I started playing Magic, he already went to Worlds in Sydney 2003 or 2, I believe, 2002. So yeah, playing forever. I just like seeing he still actually goes around to PPTQs and tries to qualify for the Pro Tour again.
He's actually wearing a Worlds t-shirt at this event. I believe he's got quite a few of them over the years. Before the more recent surge of Czech players on the pro scene, with the likes of Martin User and so on, Arnost was definitely a mainstay at the Pro Tour. Force of Will there, countering Thought-Knot Seer.
Yeah, Arnost not messing around. I'm going to draw the Misty Rainforest that he put on top with the Ponder before. And now he'll be able to play Goyf.
Yeah, immediately cracks that Rainforest. Going to fetch Tropical Island here, I would imagine. One thing about this Sultai deck is that it doesn't tend to run very many basics. There is a little bit of potential to give it some mana trouble if you have the likes of Wasteland, or I've even seen Back to Basics knocking about in some of the Miracles lists.
Yeah, that's a card I haven't seen for a while.
It's one that I think is partly a nod to the fact that this Eldrazi deck is so powerful. It's another deck that, if you happen to land a Back to Basics at the right moment, it really can't do a whole lot.
And Arnost is in a really good spot here because not only does he have a 4/5 Tarmogoyf, but now when Andreas is playing another Thought-Knot Seer, Arnost actually has both Goyf and Dismember. So if Andreas takes the Goyf, Arnost can still play the Dismember, kill it, get to draw a card, and keep attacking. If he takes the other one, the Dismember, then Arnost just plays another Goyf and keeps bashing because it's a 4/5. So Arnost in a really good spot, and unless Andreas draws something spicy, he'll be firmly on the back foot.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Tarmogoyf is a 4/5. Once it gets up to being 5/6, if that should so happen, it's bigger than almost every creature that can be played by Ganz.
Yeah, but I actually didn't really like this play. Like, Arnost with the trigger on the stack played the Dismember because he didn't want to lose it, but I just don't think it was correct to play it in this way. I would just let the trigger resolve, take one of the 2 cards, and go from there. So now he loses both Dismember and the Goyf. At least the Thought-Knot Seer is off the board, but yeah, he still has Brainstorm, and one of the card he drew off of it was actually Fetchline to put it to real good use here if you wanted to.
So Brainstorm sees a Baleful Strix along with a land and a Delver of Secrets there. So we do now know that in spite of having lost that second Tarmogoyf, he is going to be able to carry on the beatdown fairly well. He's going to need to, though. He's on just 10 life here compared to the full complement of 20 for Andreas Ganz.
He already played the Thoughtseize, played the Dismember, Force of Will, some fetch lands. He's hurting himself. I wonder if there's anyone in the room just going wild with Lava Spikes and Chain Lightning Bolts.
Oh, there's always one or two degenerates in every event like this looking to run the most aggressive red deck they can. I'm sure that somewhere in the room there'll be Goblin Guides and Lightning Bolts doing good work. You get to play Fire Blast in this format too, which is exciting.
Exciting indeed. I wonder how Arnost is going to sequence this, because it looks like he put a land and Deathrite Shaman on top. So yeah, he'll probably then play a land, fetch away the cards, because he didn't have any instant or sorcery to put on top to flip with the Delver. Oh, okay. He's actually going to do Baleful Strix first, draw the Deathrite Shaman, and now he's can play fetch, and then gets to decide between Delver of Secrets or Deathrite Shaman as his play, both of which are quite good, I would say. I think he's going to go for the Delver first.
Yeah, Arnost Zidek here, keen to redress the balance a little bit in terms of life total, get well ahead on the board. He knows that each individual threat coming out of the Eldrazi deck has the potential to be pretty substantial.
Yeah, and I was wrong. He goes for Deathrite Shaman. Well, we'll now see Andreas probably play his third Thought-Knot Seer. I can see the case for playing Deathrite Shaman because it's an objectively more powerful card, especially in long game. But I think Arnost knows about the Warping Wail, and if he had played the Delver, he would be able to maybe flip it right away and just be a lot more aggressive in the game. And he would have flipped it, draws Brainstorm.
So Brainstorm with no other cards in hand, a little bit of a dangerous proposition, because you can kind of find yourself a little bit locked. You know what you're going to be drawing for the next couple of turns, and if they're not good, you can get stuck. As it happens, he does find another fetch land in the top 3, so some flexibility in Arnost Zidek's draws here. If he so chooses, he can elect to not have all of those Abrupt Decays, because Abrupt Decay, a risky one. It's obviously very important to deal with the likes of Chalice of the Void. It can deal with Chalice of the Void, even if Chalice of the Void was set on 2, because this is a spell that can't be countered. But in the face of a Thought-Knot Seer, doing nothing at all.
That's true, but it's still very necessary. There's also a couple of other hits, like the Phyrexian Revoker. The Endless one is a very good hit for Abrupt Decay, so you definitely want to keep them in alongside your Dismembers and Murderous Cuts. Maybe he boarded in, Arnost maybe boarded in also a Diabolic Edict. It's a card I've known to play for a while, back in the day.
The original Edict effect,
Yeah.
That's kind of where the name comes from, originally printed in Tempest. 1 on a black, instant, target player sacrifices a creature. Just as good against Thought-Knot Seer as it is against Emrakul.
Indeed, yeah, it has a lot of use. It's a very versatile card. So let's see what's going to happen here.
Well, Tendo Icebridge entirely without color now.
Interesting. So I'll draw Displacer here. So Arnost has decided to play a little slow. He didn't attack with his Strix or his Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, some persistent sources of damage in the form of Deathrite Shaman. Doesn't need to get stuck into the red zone in order to be able to deal damage. But Arnost Zidek is now the blue deck that is drawing 1 card a turn.
Yes. So he's, and we know that he has Abrupt Decay now in his hand, 1 on top of library. So now he's attacking. I think I would have attacked last turn as well. But we know that Andreas has the Warping Veil that can kill the Baleful Strix or the Deathrite Shaman. But Arnost doesn't hesitate, takes care of the Eldrazi Displacer. He doesn't want to bother with that one too much.
Yeah, and as long as you have removal, it's almost like there's a spell Skite in play on the other side of the board. You just have to deal with the Displacer, because anything else would be getting flickered. Though, to be fair, there weren't actually any other targets, at least at present, for Abrupt Decay on Andreas Gantz's side of the board.
Yeah, Andreas did draw an Eldrazi Temple. And I'm not sure how it changes the complexion of this game. There's the graveyards. We're probably just checking for Tarmogoyf, just making sure that it is indeed a 4/5. I see lands, instant sorceries. There's some creatures, so 4/5 seems accurate because both artifacts are exiled for now. But
Arnost Zidek with his graveyard splayed out in front of him there. He wishes that was his hand.
Yeah. Definitely.
Currently hellbent.
All right, so this is interesting because Andreas goes for the big endless one. It's a 6/6, but we know that Arnost saw both two abrupt decays with his brainstorm a couple of turns back. So now he'll for sure not to sacrifice his polluted delta to draw the abrupt decay here, whereas maybe in a different world he would have wanted to sacrifice it to draw some more relevant action.
Is he going to do the full Craig Jones flip? Does not look like it.
Going a little slow there.
There's still a bit of time on the round, though.
Yeah, of course. He's up a game. He can play in such a way to make sure that he's going to win. He dealt a lot of damage to himself there, so.
I think all of the damage that Arnost Zidek has taken has been self-inflicted in this game.
Yes. But the threat of Andreas' creatures have changed the way he attacked or blocked in this game overall. He couldn't be as aggressive as he would have hoped. Now Andreas will actually be forced to very likely Warping Veil the Deathrite Shaman because just two activations kill him by exiling an instant sorcery. So tough spot for Andreas Ganz.
Yeah, plenty of instants and sorceries, at least in Arnost Zidek's graveyard. I mean, obviously he would prefer to get rid of those in his opponents because it at least means that he has the option of Snapcaster Mage, but if it's get rid of some of my spells in my graveyard and win the game, I think he's probably going to be okay with that.
Yep. As expected, there's a Warping Veil. I was really happy when this card started to see play in Legacy.
It's so versatile that it felt like it had to be seeing play somewhere. And I know that there was even some talk of it potentially seeing some play in the vintage Mishra's Workshop decks.
Oh, wow.
And actually, Eldrazi have been making a bit of a splash in Vintage in the last few weeks.
So Arnost finally not scared to attack with his Belfast Strix now because it does mean that it would be a 2-turn crawl just from the Strix. And we know Arnost also drew a Diabolic Edict here, so I don't think Andreas is going to find any creatures to deal with both creatures on board of Arnost.
Yep, there's the handshake. Arnost Zidek advances to 3-0. Meanwhile, Andreas Ganz picking up a loss early in the tournament. Not where you want to get them. I mean, you don't want to lose at any point, but early in the day, certainly a little bit tougher in terms of tiebreakers. You see there Arnost signing the match slip, and that is the last of our feature matches from the area. So round 3 in the books. Next round kind of exciting because that's when the pros are going to come off their buys. We're going to start to see all sorts of big names that you may well recognize in our feature match area. But for now, we're going to close things out. But do not go anywhere because there is a lot more magic available for you here from Grand Prix Prague.